My lord, the human army approaches.
Rise, good sir. Prince Camurus III said as he raised his spyglass. Is this all they brought? The elfish prince and his orc lieutenant watched on as in the distance a small column of human vehicles crept towards their grand army. I count 4 wheel beasts and 2 man-carts. No foot soldiers. Scryer, he said, clapping his hands. Order the battle mages to prepare a heat metal spell. Yes, my lord. A robed high scryer said as he took a knee and cast his mind deep into the skyplane. Although every one of the 4 races were attuned to magic, only high scryers could use magic to communicate, casting their words across great distances by bouncing magical beams off the sky.
Humans, the orc growled. When will they ever learn?
They never did, the prince sighed, patting his trusty lieutenant's shoulders, and they never will. That is why we must exterminate them. Centuries ago, Prince Camurus' father, the elvish duke and high king of the 4 races, had declared a crusade upon all humankind. The humans were already wasteful, inefficient and barbaric people. They had no art or culture like the elves. They lacked the wisdom or might of the orcs. They had no ingenious feats of engineering like the dwarves, and couldn't bend magic at all, unlike the fairies. About the only thing they could do was breed. A human child reached maturity years faster than any other race, and a single human encampment could spawn hundreds of humans a year. Fortunately, they hadn't been a problem. Not until the barbaric Khan had unified the human people together and began raiding bordering cities. It had taken the Duke and the 4 races just under a decade to eradicate the last human, and now, the Grand Scryers, who lived their life scrying the stars, have found another plane of existence where it seemed mankind wasn't just alive, but thriving. Using their great telescopy, the Grand Scryers had observed shocking technological advancements, all born from human arrogance. They lived in buildings that towered over the trees, and even some mountains. Their great cities burned Mother Nature to fire their industries. The humans even put men on iron birds, which flew themselves around the world in record time. Fascinating. Degenerate and arrogant, but fascinating nonetheless. The decision was quickly made to eradicate the humans before they could spread to the other planes. And so far, the campaign had gone exceptionally well. For all their technological advancements, the humans proved to be just as much of a pushover as their primitive counterparts, as not a single one of their metal ships or vehicles had any of the enchantments that could counter a simple heat metal spell. Their vast iron warships that could throw iron arrows hundreds of miles to hit targets the size of a pinprick. A grand mage who merely cast heat metal and watched as the crew fled from the ship with severe burns. Within minutes, the shells and fuel bunkers would cook off, and the entire ship would sink. How about their iron beasts? Great trap monsters with massive cannons, wheeled beasts with smaller, faster-firing cannons, or the mancarts. Again, a mere pushover. Even their great cannons that fire super-dense darts would deflect right off even the cheapest of armor, made by the drunkest of dwarves, and a trainee battlemage could cast heat metal and watch as the beasts expelled the burning crew, as the shells and fuel cooked off. What about the iron birds? The ones that could hover in the air like a dragon, or could move faster than the speed of sound and drop exploding eggs. The ones that the battle mages could simply cast a void bubble around, causing the iron burst to lose all lift and fall out of the sky. For all of their weapons and technology, the humans were proving to be just as weak as they had been when they were first eradicated. And now, it looked like they'd lost everything but these 6 vehicles. 6 vehicles against 8 battalions worth of 4 race armies, who all at once jeered and laughed at their prey. The orcs bashed their shields and roared. The elves rhythmically beat their spears against the grounds, which the battle mages could turn into a demoralizing song spell, and the dwarves heavily readied their siege engines. In comparison, the 6 human vehicles sang no song, nor gave any cries, as they spread themselves out to form a line a good distance away from the army's front. As one, they stopped, allowing the prince to get a good look at the beasts. Curious, he thought, as he observed the iron beasts. He had seen these world beasts before. They were called Elives in human language. Normally, they had a rotating turret with a fast-firing cannon on them, but these world beasts didn't. Instead, their tops were flat and covered with a series of metal tubes and sticks. Each also had a couple of drum or gumdrop-shaped devices atop them, mounted on poles, which appeared to be rising into the air. "My lord," the lieutenant started. "Look, what are they doing?" The prince stroked his beard thoughtfully. What could they be up to? Scryer, he called. Give the word to advance. Get the battlemages close enough to cast heat metal, then kill anyone who tries to. It was at this point that every single magically attuned creature, practically the entire army, was overcome by a horrible screeching. The entire army doubled over in pain, grabbed their ears, and screamed. The face scouts fell from the sky, wings and hands grasped tightly around their ears, visceral expressions on their face. What's happened? He managed to think, before every thought was drowned out by a terrible screech, as if someone had dragged a sword across a stringed instrument. It was quickly followed by shrieking vocals in the human language. It was some sort of song. Covering his ears didn't work. No sound was being played. It was magic. The humans, who couldn't even cast the simplest of a summoning spell, were now blasting the world with magic. Every coherent thought was dashed to pieces before it could be formed by the horrid music. He'd been told what it was like to be a scryer, hearing the natural world whisper in your ear, but it seemed that one didn't have to be one to hear these magical words. And speaking of the scryer... My lord! The orc managed to ram the blinding, deafening magical screech before he doubled over and vomited. He managed to point a finger at the scryer before vomiting again, and in horror, Prince Chimera's watched as blood oozed from the scryer's eyes, mouth, and nose. The scryer screamed in agony, before gurgling once and killing over, seemingly drowning in his own blood. It flowed from him as the horrible, terrible song relentlessly continued. It stopped for a moment, and Prince Chimera's forced himself to recover, fighting off the dazzling effect of the magical song long enough to look down upon his once mighty army. In horror, he saw that what had affected the scryer had seemingly afflicted the entire Battlemage Corps. He ran over to his scryer and shook him, shouting desperately as if his volume could revive him. But the moment he laid a hand on him, he could tell he was gone. The magical presence in every being, even a human, was gone. What madness has fallen upon us? He cried, before another wave of magic overwhelmed him, this one far stronger than the last. He fought to stay conscious, but felt reality slipping away. He tried to think, tried to remember, but it was all ripped away from him. His memories, his thoughts, his plans, all of it was wiped away from his brain by the magic. He could only hear the song in his head, repeating over and over and over again. He felt a trickle of blood stream from his nose and ears. He saw sparks play in his vision, as it went darker and darker and... Secret. You. Report SN 001-RAD-1012. You. Report Generator 11th MEU Electronic Warfare Detachment. You. DTG 202-91012-0905. You. Report. Secret. Bluff. Electronic warfare elements of the 11th MEU have successfully repulsed an invading four-race army using a combination of government jamming systems and civilian ham cellular equipment. Notably, the 11th MEU is the first human military force to successfully repulse a fourth-race army without sustaining a single casualty. U. The phenomenon known as magic is confirmed to exist on the entire electromagnetic spectrum. The band it exists on will depend on what is being cast. Communications between scryers take only 5 to 10 watt equivalents on the MF and HF band. A spell like heat metal requires excess of 10,000 watt equivalents on the SHF band and is limited to a few hundred meters. U. Communication between scryers appears to be similarly affected by ionospheric conditions as traditional HF communication is. Secret. Magic scryers, or magically sensitive entities, MSEs, cannot currently listen to encrypted transmissions or track frequency agile signals. Unencrypted analog transmissions at high wattage can be perceived by scryers and MSEs. Secret. Electronic warfare teams were able to use high-powered jamming equipment to eliminate an entire four-race army. Effects on unshielded MSEs include severe bleeding from orifices, internal hemorrhaging, and death. Secret. Man-portable drone jamming guns or highly directional antennas have proven to be highly effective at striking MSEs at significant range, often up to 500 meters. U. 11th MEU technical support elements have successfully shared software updates for cell phones or digital mobile radio handsets that allow them to transmit at high power out of their prescribed bands. These cell phones and DMR handsets have successfully been used by civilians and law enforcement to repel small groups of roving four-race invaders. U. In cooperation with local emergency service dispatch, their trunked DMR network has been converted to transmit at high power out of band. U. In cooperation with cellular service providers, the local LTE and 5G cellular infrastructure has been configured to transmit noise at high power. U. In cooperation with ham enthusiasts, commercial equipment in civilian hands has also been successfully used to target and destroy entire armies. U. In cooperation with radio stations, AM and FM radio transmitters have been converted to transmit noise at high power. U. Recommend software updates for cell phones and radio handsets be shared with the wider civilian populace to provide them with means of protection. U. Recommend that, with the aid of ham enthusiasts, cellular service companies, radio stations, and emergency services convert any civilian equipment to transmit out-of-band noise at high wattage. U. Statement from Report Generator. This revelation is momentous to us. Magical beings have a strong over-reliance on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is something we can easily exploit. The tide of this war for our right to simply exist has changed in our favor. We must ensure the enemy cannot regain the initiative.